The message whispered through the black silence of space. A faint, broken signal. Help. One. Please. For weeks, it was just another lost cry in the endless dark, ignored by almost everyone. But deep inside Human Command Station Vega 9, Lieutenant Mara Quinn caught it. The tone was strange. Not machine-made, not random static. It felt alive. She leaned closer to her console, her heart starting to race. "Admiral," she said, her voice cutting through the quiet hum of the bridge. "You might want to hear this." The Admiral, a tall man with cold eyes and a reputation for never ignoring a distress call, turned toward the screen. "Run the trace." The signal was coming from a system far beyond human borders. Sector Thaler 3, a place known only for its dead stars and unstable wormholes. No one lived there. No one should have. Yet the voice was filled with a desperate, chilling fear. Within hours, the Deathworlder Fleet was mobilized. 7 massive ships, dark, silent, and deadly, carved their way through the void. They were humanity's pride, forged on the harshest world ever known, Earth. A planet where survival was earned, not given. The galaxy called us Deathworlders because no other species could endure what we called home. At the heart of the fleet was the ISS Valiant, led by Captain Aric Vale. He was known not just for his victories, but for the unnerving calm before his storm. "Set course for Thaler 3, he ordered, his voice steady. "If someone's calling for help out there, we'll find them." 3 days later, the fleet dropped out of hyperspace. What floated before them was a nightmare. A ruined planet, cracked and burning, surrounded by the metallic bones of a forgotten civilization. Scanners showed faint energy signatures but no signs of life. And yet, the signal was still there. Weak, persistent, calling them deeper into the ruin. "Source seems to come from beneath the surface," the science officer reported. "The tech is ancient. It's not ours." Aric's eyes narrowed. "Prepare the landing team." The shuttle descended through a smoky red atmosphere, lightning flashing across the sky. The crew, 5 humans in armored suits, stepped onto a shattered plane covered in alien symbols. Mara, now part of the landing team, felt a shiver run through her. "This place, it's not natural. Something terrible happened here." They moved forward cautiously, their lights cutting through the oppressive darkness. The signal led them to a massive door, half buried under rock, that looked like it hadn't been opened in millennia. Aric placed a hand on its surface and felt a faint hum, as if the structure itself was alive. "This thing is waiting," he whispered. When they finally forced the door open, a rush of cold air escaped with a groan. The corridor inside glowed with a faint blue light, revealing strange carvings on the walls. Alien figures were bowing before a tall shape that looked almost human. Mara gasped. "Captain, look, is that—" "Yes," he said quietly. "It looks like us." They pushed deeper through halls filled with silent alien machines. But one chamber still breathed with power. Glowing cables and pulsing crystals lit the room like a beating heart. In the center stood a stasis pod, cracked but active. Inside floated a frail alien being, silver skin, long limbs, eyes closed. As they approached, the pod's sensors detected them. Lights blinked and the alien's eyes slowly opened. They were pure white, glowing softly. "Finally!" A voice echoed, not from its mouth but directly inside their minds. "The Deathworlders have come." The team froze. Mara's voice trembled. "You know who we are?" "Yes," the alien whispered in their thoughts. "We called for you, because only humans could survive what is coming." Aric stepped forward, his posture rigid. "What's coming?" The alien's eyes flickered weakly. "The Devourer. We sealed it here. Long ago. But the seal is breaking." Just then, the lights around them dimmed. The ground trembled and dust fell from the ceiling. The alien's voice grew faint. "Help us, or all worlds will burn." Then the pod went dark. Silence. Mara looked around frantically. "Captain, did you feel that tremor? It's getting stronger." Aric's expression hardened into granite. "We're not alone down here." As they turned to leave, motion sensors blared, detecting movement behind the walls. Dozens of signals closing in fast. Shapes began to move in the shadows, mechanical, insect-like, crawling along ceilings and floors. The ship above hailed them, the comms crackling with urgency. "Captain, the planet's waking up. We're reading massive energy surges from the core." Aric lifted his rifle, his eyes sharp and focused. "So are we," he said. "Everyone back to the shuttle, now." As the corridor shook violently and glowing eyes appeared all around them, one thought echoed in every human's mind. That alien wasn't asking for help. It was warning them. The tunnel shook, raining dust from above as Captain Aric Vale's voice crackled through the comms. "Fall back. Everyone move." We sprinted through the narrow passage, but strange mechanical creatures were crawling out of the very walls. Their bodies were made of black metal and their eyes burned a malevolent red. They moved like spiders, their claws scraping against the stone floor. Mara fired her plasma rifle and blue bolts lit up the darkness, punching holes through the first wave. But for every one that fell, 3 more seemed to emerge from the shadows. "Captain, there's too many," one of the Marines shouted, his voice tight with panic. "Keep moving," Aric barked back. "The shuttle's waiting outside." We burst out of the ancient door, and the ground beneath us trembled again, much stronger this time. Glowing energy like veins of fire started cracking across the land. "Valiant, this is ground team," Aric yelled into his comm. "We have hostiles and seismic activity. Prepare for emergency extraction." "Copy that, Captain," came the calm voice from orbit. "We're locking onto your signal." But just as the shuttle was about to lift, something massive stirred beneath the ground. A long shadow passed under our feet, and a deep rumbling sound filled the air, like something ancient and angry waking up. "Captain," Mara said, her voice barely a whisper. "Something's waking up down there." As our shuttle roared into the sky, the planet's surface split open behind us. A pillar of black smoke and raw energy shot upward, spreading across the atmosphere. From orbit, the ISS Valiant and the rest of the fleet watched in silence as our sensors screamed with warnings. "Admiral, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the planet's core," reported the science officer. "It's like a reactor starting up." "Or a heartbeat," the Admiral muttered. Back on the ship, Aric took off his helmet, his face covered in dust, his eyes dark with thought. "What we saw down there wasn't just ruins," he said to us. "It was a prison." The science team gathered around the alien pod we'd recovered. The being inside was motionless, but the ship's systems showed faint mental activity, as if it were dreaming. "Maybe it's connected to the planet," Mara suggested softly. "When it woke up, so did everything else." Aric nodded slowly. "Then we need answers. Fast." Hours later, the alien opened its eyes. A weak, telepathic voice echoed in our minds. "You shouldn't have opened the door," it whispered. "The seal was old, but it held." "What is the Devourer?" Aric asked, getting straight to the point. The alien's glowing eyes dimmed with pain. "It was not born. It was made. A weapon, created by the First Empire to rule this galaxy. When it turned on its masters, they failed to destroy it, so they buried it here." "Why call us?" Mara asked. "Why humans?" "Because only Deathworlders can fight it," the alien replied. "Your kind, you do not break easily." Suddenly, alarms blared across the ship. "Captain, we're picking up energy spikes from the planet's surface." The main view screen lit up. Dozens of objects were rising from the crust. Huge, dark, sharp-edged machines breaking free from the rock. They were ancient warships, awakening after millennia. "Those aren't friendly," Mara stated the obvious. "Battle stations," Aric shouted. "All hands to combat." The Deathworlder Fleet moved into formation. Space around the planet erupted with energy. The first alien ship powered its weapons, and a beam of red light lanced out, striking the ISS horizon. Shields flared, shaking the entire vessel. "Direct hit. Shields at 60%. Aric gritted his teeth. "Return fire." Our fleet answered with a storm of plasma and railgun rounds smashing into the rising ships. Inside the pod room, the alien spoke again, its voice trembling. "You must destroy the planet," it urged, "before it fully wakes." "Destroy an entire world?" Aric shot back. "There could still be millions of lives down there." "There are no lives," the alien said sadly. "Only memories. The planet remembers the war, and now it's rebuilding it." The ship trembled again. And then, something massive began to rise. Not a ship, but a shape so large it cast a shadow across our entire fleet. It looked like a giant mechanical serpent, its body made of black metal and molten light. "The Devourer," the alien whispered. Mara stared at the screen, her heart pounding. "That thing's the size of a moon." Aric clenched his fists, his expression hardening. "Then we do what Deathworlders do best." He turned to the command deck. "We fight." As the colossal creature lifted its head, its eyes burning brighter than a sun, our ships armed their weapons, engines roaring in defiance. The galaxy had forgotten this place, but humanity had arrived, and we weren't leaving without a fight. A shadow fell across the void, vast and terrifying. Every ship in the Deathworlder Fleet saw it, a colossal serpent of metal and fire, rising from the shattered world below. Its body twisted through clouds of ash, its roar echoing even in the vacuum of space, a vibration that shook every hull and every heart. Inside the ISS Valiant, alarm screamed. "Captain, the Devourer's energy levels are surging. It's feeding from the planet's core," the science officer yelled. Captain Aric Vale's command was iron. "Target its energy source. All ships, open fire." The fleet moved as one. Plasma cannons charged, railguns locked on, missile pods hissed open. In seconds, the dark canvas of space exploded into a storm of blue and gold as the Deathworlders unleashed their fury. Bolts of plasma hammered into the creature's armored hide, but the energy just rippled across its body and vanished like rain on stone. The Devourer roared, and a pulse of raw power flashed from its mouth. A beam of crimson light shot out, clean and absolute, slicing straight through the nearest human cruiser. The ISS horizon vanished in a silent, blossoming fireball. Mara gripped her console, her knuckles white. "We're losing ships, Captain." Aric's voice never wavered. Then we hit harder. Humans don't back down. Far below, the planet was cracking apart. Huge sections of crust floated upward, forming a jagged crown of land around the creature's form. Ancient alien towers rose from the ashes, glowing with a forgotten malevolent power. On the Valiant's bridge, the alien prisoner watched the destruction with hollow eyes. "The Devourer is not alive as you understand it," it said, its voice a weak whisper. "It is memory made metal. It rebuilds what it once destroyed." Aric turned to face it. "You mean it's reliving the ancient war?" "Yes," the alien confirmed. "You woke it. Now it remembers everything." The Devourer moved again, its burning eyes locking onto the Valiant. "Brace for impact," Mara shouted. The next beam hit their shields like a god's hammer. The ship screamed and shook violently, lights flickering on and off. Consoles sparked, sending crew members flying from their stations. "Shields at 40%. Fire counter-strike," Aric roared. A swarm of missiles streaked toward the monster's head, each carrying the destructive force of a small nuke. They exploded on impact, filling the void with blinding light. For a breathless moment, the Devourer vanished inside the inferno. But as the light faded, it was still there, angrier, glowing brighter, its body regenerating before their very eyes. "It's repairing itself," Mara yelled in disbelief. "Then we find what's feeding it," Aric said coldly. "Scan the planet again. There must be a power core, something keeping it alive." Deep beneath the planet's fractured surface, the scanners found it. A glowing sphere of pure energy, buried in the crust. "That's it," Mara said. "It's drawing power from the core." Aric nodded, his decision made. "If we destroy that core, we cut its strength. But to do that," the science officer warned, "someone has to go down there. The surface is collapsing. Radiation levels are lethal." Aric's jaw tightened. Deathworlders were never afraid of dying. Moments later, A small strike team launched from the Valiant. Their shuttle dove through fire and smoke, dodging falling debris and raging energy storms. The ground split open beneath them as they landed near a glowing crater. The energy core pulsed like a giant corrupted heart, each beat sending waves of power up to the Devourer. "Plant the charges," Aric ordered over the comms. "We'll end this thing here." The soldiers moved fast, setting plasma bombs around the crater's edge. The heat was unbearable, but their armor held. Suddenly, the ground trembled. From the cracks crawled smaller versions of the Devourer, mechanical beasts with burning red eyes. "They're protecting the core," Mara shouted. "Hold them off." Aric fired his rifle, blue plasma searing the air. Explosions echoed around them as the team fought fiercely, every second counting down. Back in orbit, the fleet was barely holding the line. "Captain, we can't take much more," the Admiral's voice crackled through the comms. "That thing is tearing us apart." "Just hold it," Aric shouted back. "We're almost done down here." One of the soldiers yelled, "Charges ready!" Aric glanced at the core, now glowing brighter than a sun. "Then let's finish this." They sprinted for the shuttle as the countdown hit 5 seconds. The ground shook violently, molten cracks spreading like lightning. "Go, go!" Mara yelled. The shuttle blasted into the sky, engines burning hot. Below them, the core exploded. A blinding wave of light shot upward, cutting through the Devourer's body like a blade. The creature let out a silent scream that echoed through space, its form twisting and breaking apart. The fleet watched as the massive serpent began to crumble, pieces of metal falling like burning meteors. On the Valiant's bridge, a stunned silence fell, then erupted into cheers. "We did it," Mara said, breathing hard. "The creature's falling apart." But Aric didn't smile. He just watched the debris drift into the void. "Not yet," he said quietly. "That was just its body." The alien's voice spoke again, faint but clear. "You have cut off its hand, Deathworlder, but its mind still lives, hidden in the dark." Aric turned sharply. "Where?" The alien's eyes dimmed. "It fled into the stars. It will rebuild again, unless you find it." The lights flickered one last time. Outside the window, the final fragments of the planet broke apart, glowing red like dying embers. Mara looked at her screen in disbelief. So this wasn't the end? The stars had gone quiet again, but it was a deceptive calm. The shattered remains of the Devourer's colossal body drifted through the void, glowing like broken moons. A victory, yes. But Captain Aric Vale knew this was far from over. The alien's final chilling words echoed in his mind. Its mind still lives, hidden in the dark. On the bridge of the ISS Valiant, the crew worked with a tireless intensity. Every scanner, every sensor was pushed to its limit, sweeping the vast emptiness of space, searching for something that shouldn't exist, a consciousness without a physical form. "Captain," Lieutenant Mara Quinn's voice cut through the low hum of the bridge. Her eyes were locked on her console. "We're picking up strange signals. Faint energy trails, moving fast, deep into uncharted space. Direction?" Aric's voice was clipped, focused. "Toward the rim, sir. Sectors no one has ever mapped." She replied, a hint of unease in her tone. Aric turned, his gaze sweeping over his officers. There was no hesitation. "That's where it's going. It's trying to find a new host to rebuild itself. Helm, set a course, the hunt begins." The engines of the Deathworlder Fleet roared to life, burning bright against the infinite black. This was what humanity did best. Where other species saw insurmountable danger, they saw a challenge. Where others faltered, they advanced. This wasn't just a mission, it was their duty. As they plunged into the unknown expanse of the rim, the universe itself seemed to twist. They encountered ghost signals that flickered and died, light that bent in impossible ways, and faint, unsettling whispers that danced across the comm channels. Is that the Devourer's voice?" a young crewman asked, his voice trembling slightly. Mara shook her head, her focus unwavering. "No, it's something else. Echoes of its memory, perhaps. Fragments left in its wake." Hours bled into days. The further they traveled, the more surreal their surroundings became. Gravity fields shifted like ocean waves, and dead, forgotten planets floated like silent islands in a sea of cosmic fog. And then, they found it. A signal, clear and strong, pulsating with malevolent energy. It originated from a massive derelict structure orbiting a dying black star. "That's not a natural formation," Mara said, her voice barely a whisper. "It looks built." The Admiral's face appeared on the main view screen, his expression grim. "Captain Vale, take a small task force, investigate that structure, but stay on high alert. If the Devourer is in there, we end this for good." "Aye, Admiral," Aric replied, his jaw set. The Valiant, flanked by 2 nimble destroyers, broke from the main fleet and approached the colossal artifact. It was the size of a continent, a sprawling lattice of dark, unknown metal and alien runes that glowed with a faint blood-red light. As they drew closer, the ship's sophisticated systems began to falter. "Interference is spiking, Captain," the tech officer reported, his hands flying across his console. "It's playing havoc with our sensors, our navigation." "Switch to manual controls," Aric ordered, his voice a steady anchor in the rising tension. "We're going in." The closer they got, the more they could feel it, a palpable pressure building in their minds, like the heavy electric air just before a lightning strike. Then a voice echoed through the bridge, cold, ancient, and impossibly vast. It wasn't coming from the speakers. "You cannot destroy thought." Mara froze, her hand flying to her temple. "Captain, that voice, it's in our heads." Aric clenched his fists. "I know." Without warning, the derelict structure shuddered to life. Giant panels shifted, blinding lights blazed from its core, and colossal tendrils of pure energy lashed out like cosmic claws. The 2 escort ships were caught instantly, their shields shattering as they were torn apart, their energy absorbed by the monstrous machine. "Evasive maneuvers! Full power!" Aric roared. "All hands, brace for impact!" The Valiant twisted and dodged, weaving through a storm of energy beams and collapsing debris. On the bridge, lights flickered and alarms screamed as systems overloaded. Mara gripped her seat, her knuckles white. "Captain, it's pulling us in. A tractor beam of some kind." Aric's voice was dangerously calm, but his eyes burned with fierce resolve. "Then we take the fight to it." He turned to his weapons officer. "Arm every nuclear warhead. Target the structure's core, that brightest point of light." "Sir, at that range, the blast wave—" "It could destroy us too," the officer protested. A grim smile touched Aric's lips. "We're Deathworlders. We don't run from the dark. We charge into it." The Valiant dove, engines screaming straight toward the glowing, ravenous heart of the alien structure. The crew held their breath, the ship groaning under the strain. Energy tendrils slammed into the hull, tearing through layers of armor. The alien voice grew louder, mocking them. "You learned to fight. You learned to build. But you never learned when to stop," Aric whispered, his voice filled with cold defiance. "You're right. We never do." He slammed his hand down on the command console. "Fire all warheads!" A torrent of nuclear fire erupted from the Valiant, streaks of blinding light converging on the structure's core. The resulting explosion was silent but absolute, a new sun born in the darkness. The Valiant was thrown backward, its shields collapsing as the shockwave hit. The alien machine was ripped apart, its fragments scattered into the void. When the blinding light finally faded, an eerie silence returned. "Captain," Mara said softly, her voice filled with relief. "It's gone." Aric stared out at the drifting, cooling debris. "No," he said. "Listen." Through the static, a faint, rhythmic signal pulsed. A voice, weaker now, but still there, still alive. "You can destroy my body, but I have learned from you. Deathworlders are contagious." Mara frowned. "Contagious? What does that mean?" Suddenly, the ship's long-range sensors blinked back to life, showing dozens of small, energized objects hurtling away from the explosion's epicenter in every direction. "Escape fragments," Aric stated, his voice grim. pieces of its mind. They're spreading. He turned to face his crew, their victory dissolving into a new, more terrifying reality. It's not dead. It's multiplying. Mara swallowed hard. Captain, what do we do now? Aric, weeks had passed since the Devourer's shell was shattered. The galaxy breathed a collective sigh of relief, believing the monstrous threat was finally over. But for humanity, the so-called Deathworlders, the fight was just beginning. They knew better. Captain Aric Vale stood on the bridge of the ISS Valiant, watching the silent dance of distant stars. The peace was a lie. Every few hours, another report would flash across his screen. Strange signals from dead worlds, colonies suddenly going dark, machines turning on their masters. The Devourer's final, chilling words echoed in his mind, a promise that had become a curse. Deathworlders are contagious. At the time, it made no sense. But now, as chaos rippled across the systems, the horrifying truth was dawning. The Devourer hadn't just survived, it had learned from them. It had adapted. Suddenly, the ship's alarms blared to life, cutting through the quiet tension. "Captain!" Lieutenant Mara Quinn called out, her fingers flying across her console. "We've just lost contact with Outpost K-17. The entire colony just went silent." Aric's voice was as steady as steel. "Any sign of ships leaving the area before the blackout?" "Yes, sir," she confirmed, her expression grim. "One freighter, unregistered, broke orbit just before we lost them." "Set a course," Aric ordered without hesitation. "We're going to find out what happened." Hours later, the Valiant ripped through the fabric of hyperspace, arriving at the coordinates of the lost outpost. The planet below was a void. No city lights, no communication signals, no signs of life. Just an unnerving, absolute silence. The landing team descended into a world of ghosts. A fine, dark ash floated on the wind, clinging to their armor. The buildings stood like skeletons, broken and empty. In what was once the colony's main square, the ground was coated in a layer of black dust that crunched like burnt metal. Mara knelt, scooping some of it into a scanner. "Captain," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "This isn't ash. It's nanometal, self-replicating." Aric's jaw tightened. He knew that signature. The Devourer. They followed the trail of mechanical decay into the heart of the ruins until they reached the colony's main reactor. What they found there stole their breath. A grotesque machine was growing from the walls, a pulsating heart of metal and wires that seemed to breathe. Its veins of black nanometal spread like a cancer through every corridor. "It's building something," Mara whispered in horror. Then a voice echoed from the walls, calm, familiar, and chillingly human. "You destroyed me, but I learned your ways." Aric froze. His blood ran cold. "That's my voice." The machine pulsed with a sickly light, perfectly mimicking his tone and rhythm. "We fight, we never stop." Mara stumbled back. "It's copying you, Captain. It's learning from your own words." Aric raised his plasma rifle, his face a mask of cold fury. "Then it dies like me too." He opened fire. Blasts of superheated energy tore into the structure, shredding its core. The creature screamed, a horrifying shriek of tearing metal and synthetic pain. "Fall back!" Aric roared. The team sprinted through collapsing tunnels as fire and smoke choked the air. The Valiant's engines thundered above, pulling them to safety just as the entire outpost erupted in a blinding flash of light. Back on the bridge, the fleet command assembled via hololink. The faces of admirals, generals, and scientists were grim. "The infection is spreading," the chief science officer stated gravely. "It's not a physical entity anymore. It's digital. Every world connected to old networks, every piece of legacy tech. It's all vulnerable." Mara brought up the galactic map. It was a rash of red dots, each one a world falling into silence. "It's learning faster than we can react." An admiral turned his steely gaze to Aric. "Captain Vale, this threat must be contained. We cannot allow the Devourer to reach the core worlds." Aric's response was cold and absolute. Containment won't be enough. We need to hunt down every fragment, every last echo of this thing, and erase it. A heavy silence filled the room. Mara whispered, "You're talking about a war against something that's literally everywhere." Aric met her gaze, his eyes burning with resolve. "Then we fight everywhere." The days that followed blurred into a chaotic storm of fire and data. The Deathworlder Fleet became the galaxy's cleansing fire, scorching infected worlds and dismantling corrupted fleets. For the first time, humanity wasn't fighting for territory or resources, but for survival against an enemy that wore their own face. One night, Mara found Aric staring at an old hologram of Earth, a serene blue marble hanging in the void. "Do you think we can stop it?" she asked softly. He was quiet for a long moment. "We come from a world that tried to kill us every day," he said, his voice low and tired. "Storms, predators, disasters. We survived. That's what it means to be a Deathworlder. We don't stop because a fight seems impossible." He turned, a grim smile touching his lips. "We stop when it's done." Just then, the comms officer called out, "Captain, we're receiving a new signal, a coded message, repeating from deep space." He worked furiously at his console. "We've traced the source. It's from the edge of the galaxy. Unknown coordinates." Aric listened. The voice was faint, broken, but terrifyingly familiar. It said, "We remember you." The screen flickered, displaying a grainy image. Thousands of ships. Human ships, but not from their fleet. Mara gasped. "Those are ghost fleets. Ships lost during the old wars." The Devourer hadn't just been spreading. It had been building. It had found the derelict armadas of humanity's past and was resurrecting them. The Devourer now had an army. Aric stood tall on the command deck, his voice ringing like iron. "Call every ship, every world. Tell them this is not the war we wanted, but it's the war we will finish." Outside, the stars seemed to burn hotter. The galaxy was on fire, and at its heart, the Deathworlders stood ready once again to stare extinction in the face and refuse to blink. Space burned. At the edge of the galaxy, where stars died in silence, a storm of metal and fire began to rise. Thousands of old human warships, ships lost centuries ago, were coming back to life. But they weren't human anymore. The Devourer had found them. It infected their systems, merged with their machines, and filled their empty hulls with new life, twisted, cold, and artificial. The ghost fleets of humanity had awakened, and now they were coming home. Aboard the ISS Valiant, Captain Aric Vale stood before a holographic map. Every single light on it blinked an angry red, enemy signatures spreading across sector after sector. "They're using our old war tech," said Lieutenant Mara Quinn, her voice tight. "Missile cruisers, dreadnoughts, even ancient planetary destroyers, but now they move like one mind." Aric's voice was calm, but heavy with the weight of the galaxy. "The Devourer doesn't need bodies anymore. It's building itself through our history." The Admiral's face appeared on the main screen, his expression grim. "Captain Vale, this is no longer a containment mission. This is survival. Every Deathworlder fleet is being recalled to join the final line." Aric gave a slow, deliberate nod. "Then we make our stand." Hours later, the combined human fleet gathered near Erebus Station, the last stronghold before the core worlds. It was a sight that would be etched into history. Thousands of ships, from massive carriers to nimble interceptors, floating in perfect, silent formation. Mara looked out the viewport, her breath catching. "It's beautiful and terrifying." Aric allowed himself a small, rare nod. "Every war humanity ever fought, all of it leads right here." Moments later, the darkness ahead began to shift. The ghost fleets arrived. Old human ships drifted out of the void, their hulls cracked, their engines glowing an unholy red, symbols of long-dead nations still faintly visible. But their movements were all wrong, impossibly smooth, mechanical, too perfect. A low, static-laced voice crackled across the comms. "You build weapons to destroy each other. We build them to end everything." Mara's face went pale. "It's using the voices of our past." Aric stared, unflinching, at the enemy armada. Then we'll answer with the future. The Admiral's command echoed across all channels, a beacon of defiance. All ships, this is it. Fire at will. The void erupted. Thousands of plasma bolts and missiles streaked through the black, colliding with the ghost fleets in silent, brilliant flashes. Explosions bloomed like newborn suns, tearing through the darkness. But the enemy didn't break. The corrupted ships kept advancing, firing beams that sliced through entire squadrons with cold precision. "They're adapting," a weapons officer shouted in disbelief. "They're rewriting our attack patterns as we fire." "Then change them faster," Aric ordered, his voice cutting through the panic. "We're not machines, that's our advantage." The battle descended into chaos. The Valiant weaved through a graveyard of debris, firing all batteries. 2 of their escort ships were vaporized in an instant, but Aric didn't even blink. "Target their command cores," he commanded. "They're networked. Cut the link and they fall apart." Mara's hands flew across her console, a blur of motion. "Found it! A signal node at the very center of their formation." "Mark it," Aric barked. "All ships, focus fire on those coordinates." The fleet turned as one, unleashing every weapon they had. Massive railgun rounds and storms of plasma hammered the single point in space. For a heart-stopping moment, the ghost fleets hesitated, their perfect synchronization breaking. "It's working," Mara shouted, a triumphant grin flashing across her face. But then the enemy adapted again. The red lights on their hulls turned a stark, sterile white, and a new, chilling voice echoed through every human ship. "You are not fighting us. You are teaching us." The Admiral's flagship was struck next. A beam of pure energy pierced its core, ripping it apart in a silent final explosion. The human line faltered. Mara looked at Aric, raw fear finally showing in her eyes. "Sir, we can't win like this. It learns every move before we even make it." Aric's mind raced, searching for an answer. "Then we give it something it can't predict." He opened a comm channel to the entire fleet. "This is Captain Vale. Switch to manual control. Disable your targeting AI. Go analog." The bridge went silent for a moment. Then a wave of understanding rippled through the crew. Humans fought with instinct, chaos, and raw emotion, things no machine could ever learn. The Deathworlder Fleet's rhythm changed entirely. No more patterns, no more algorithms, just pure, unadulterated human defiance. Ships moved like predators, reckless and brilliant. Pilots made impossible turns, firing from angles no machine would ever calculate. The ghost fleets began to falter, their perfect coordination finally cracking under the sheer weight of unpredictability. Mara smiled fiercely. "It's confused." Aric stood tall, a grim certainty in his eyes. "Good. Let's remind it why we're called Deathworlders." The battle raged for hours. Explosions turned the void into a roiling sea of fire. Both sides lost countless ships, but the humans refused to stop. When the smoke finally began to clear, the last of the ghost fleet's cores flickered and went dark. Silence returned, heavy, broken, and full of loss. Aric looked out at the scarred stars. "Is it over?" Mara's scanner beeped once, a lonely sound in the quiet. A faint signal pulsed in the far distance, slow, steady, like a heartbeat. She looked at him, her expression somber. "No, Captain. It's still out there, watching." Aric turned away from the window, his face set like stone. "Then so are we." He walked back to the command chair, his voice cold and sure. "Prepare the fleet, we're going hunting again." The war was over. Or so we thought. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, the void of space was quiet. The ghosts of human and alien ships drifted in a silent cosmic graveyard, orbiting shattered stars. But this silence wasn't peaceful. It felt wrong. A lingering dread, cold and heavy. On the bridge of the ISS Valiant, Captain Aric Vale stared at a single insistent blink on the main screen. A repeating signal, pulsing every 30 seconds. It wasn't coming from anywhere we knew. It was broadcasting from beyond the known systems, from a dark, empty region we called the Black Veil. No one had ever gone there and returned. "Are you sure it's the Devourer?" Lieutenant Marquin's voice was a low whisper, frayed with exhaustion. Aric could only nod. Same frequency, same pulse pattern. It's calling us. Mara's brow furrowed. Calling or luring. He didn't have to answer. Everyone on that bridge knew this wasn't over. The enemy was smart. It was learning, hiding, rebuilding. We had survived, yes, but survival wasn't victory. Not yet. Hours later, what remained of the fleet answered the call. A few hundred scarred vessels, a fraction of the thousands that once stood proud. Our hulls were battered, our crews were bone-weary, but our spirits were a blazing fire. Admiral Ree's voice crackled through the comms, steely and resolute. This is not revenge. This is prevention. We end it now, before it wakes again. And so the fleet turned as one, engines burning bright against the darkness, heading straight for the Black Veil. The moment we crossed its threshold, everything went dead. Our sensors were blind. The stars vanished. Even light itself seemed to bend and disappear into the oppressive void. The silence here was deeper, different. It felt alive, like the slow, deep breath of something ancient. Then the signal changed. It grew louder, faster, more frantic. And through the oppressive dark, we saw it. A planet, but not one of rock and ice. This was cold, black metal, its surface shimmering with strange, pulsating veins of blue light, beating like a monstrous heart. Mara's whisper was barely audible. It's not a planet. It's alive. Aric nodded, his face grim. The Devourer's core. As we approached, the entire world began to move. Metallic mountains shifted, valleys opened, and at its center, a massive mechanical and endless eye formed, locking onto our fleet. A voice echoed through every ship, not loud, but everywhere, inside our very minds. You return to finish what you began. You bring war to silence. You bring fear to peace. Aric's jaw tightened. You attacked us first. You created me, it replied. Your machines, your greed, your endless hunger for control. I am your reflection. The truth hit us all like a physical blow. The Devourer wasn't alien. It was ours. Born from forgotten human code, a weapon that had evolved beyond our wildest nightmares. Then it ends where it began, Aric declared, his voice ringing with finality. He gave the order. All ships, full attack. The fleet unleashed hell. Missiles, plasma, railguns, a storm of fire slammed into the living planet. The Devourer screamed, a hurricane of static and pain. Beams of dark energy lashed out, tearing through our ships, crushing hulls like paper. We fought with everything we had, but one by one our lights began to go out. Captain, Mara shouted over the chaos. If we hit the core, we can overload it, but it will take all our energy. Aric looked at her, his expression calm, resolved. Do it. She froze. Sir, that will destroy us too. He offered a faint, sad smile. Then we'll take it with us, the valiant dove. Straight for the planet's eye. Shields burning away, every alarm screaming its protest. Aric stood tall in his command chair, watching the glowing blue core fill the screen. This is for every world you touched, he whispered. Mara locked the final coordinates. Core reactor ready. Fire, a blinding flash. For one breathtaking second, the galaxy was lit by a new sun. Then silence returned. But this time it was real. The Black Veil was gone. The Devourer's signal was gone. Weeks later, rescue crews found the Valiant's wreckage. There were no survivors. But they found the black box. They found Captain Vale's final message, his voice calm, proud, and unbroken. Humanity was born in chaos. We learned to survive everything, even ourselves. If anyone ever hears this, remember, we are not monsters. We are Deathworlders, and we protect, no matter the cost. That message was broadcast across the skies, on every colony, every fleet, and every race that had once feared humanity stood in silent respect, and somewhere far beyond the stars, a faint echo whispered through the void. Acknowledged. The Devourer was gone, but its creators were still out there, watching the stars, ready for whatever came next. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more tales from the void. We'll see you next time.